Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim Yishlayu Ohavayich. We pray for the well-being of Jerusalem through the words of Psalm 122. May those who love you be at peace. Yehi Shalom b'chelech, Shalva b'armenotayich. May there be well-being within your ramparts, peace in your citadels. Laman achai v're'ai, adaberana shalom bach. For the sake of my kin and my fellow human beings, I pray for the well-being of Jerusalem and all Israel. In 1994, I walked along rooftops in the old city, Ir Ha'atika. The introduction to the city of David, to the old city of Jerusalem, was an incredible moment in my life. To put my feet onto the layers of history, approach the stones, who, as the song goes, have hearts like human beings. The pulse and the beat and the rhythm of old city Jerusalem life for the Jewish people was only complemented by the incredible bustle and busyness of the Arab market and our Christian neighbors praying in their churches, and our Armenian brothers and sisters making their pottery and showing off their beautiful art. This was a time when, walking on the rooftops, one could see flags of many nations. Great hope was in the air. It was just before peace deals would be announced in the Middle East that unfortunately never really solidified the type of unifying relationships that we pray for to this day. Walking on the rooftops of the old city, one stands a little above history in order to reflect down on the streets and the alleyways and the narrow paths below. And reflecting on that place and the flags that flew brings me back to the beginning of this week's Torah portion, Bamidbar, where flags are flown, arranged just so, three, and three on each side of the centralizing Mishkan, the tabernacle of the Jewish people in the wilderness. Flags for each of the tribes to represent their uniqueness and their distinctions. The camp with flags flying high, unifying the entire people around a central address, the Mishkan, a central address of godliness, the morality of holiness and the Torah of Israel that would guide our pathways both physically and in order to create righteousness and the pursuit thereof, tzedek tirdov, a pursuit of righteousness and justice throughout time in the land of Israel and beyond. The Midrash tells us that the myriads of angels in heaven also had their flags afloat as they danced and moved around God. And with a little bit of peering into heaven, the Jewish people below said, we too want flags. We too need flags for our camp, centered around the Mishkan and God's Shekhinah, God's holy presence. And so it was that with flags granted, they created a formation of a camp that was, as mentioned, a unified kind of formation that could not only establish a sense of home, but could be folded, carried, reconstructed at the moment that unity needed to be accomplished in order to traverse the wilderness. People centered themselves around the Mishkan, accepted God as their ruler in their hearts and for their everyday actions and interactions among people. There was a centering source of morality, court systems that expressed that commitment to Kedusha that Moses and Aaron and Miriam brought them out of Egypt for. The oneness that Torah fostered encompasses more than just the Jewish people. Thinking back to that house we built in the old city under Jewish control since 1967, a place for four peoples, four different flags at least. That house, made of stones and now bricks, cement and lumber and nails, and all the supplies we need to electrify and light the city walls. We can imagine the Bonei Yerushalayim, the builders of Jerusalem, the Shomrei Yerushalayim, we the guardians of the old city and the new Jerusalem alike, bringing peoples of the world, tourists and residents and inhabitants, Jews and Druze, Arabs and Armenians, Christians, Hindus, all those of nations around the world. And the builder says to the Buddhist neighbor or a Jewish brother, come into my home, see what's here. And yes, everyone can focus on the arrangement of individual stones and how incredible it is they still stand, or the new construction and the type of commitment we have to cementing here, electrifying there, wiring and creating access to satellite channels through this high-tech looking equipment on the roofs, where we once just saw laundry folded over lines. But the point is that one could look only at the individual building blocks, the individual peoples of the world who visit, the individual cultures who live in the old city or in Jerusalem. Look at the differentiated reality and realities and narratives. But one, after the builders invite us into the home, could be asked to look at the potential metaphor and reality of a house that is ready to be inhabited, that the materials themselves individually hang together, are constructed in such a way to create a larger possibility, a house that stands to be inhabited by the hearts, minds, and souls of the many. The Jewish people knew that this was the challenge with the old city of Jerusalem, the new city of Jerusalem, all the land of Israel. We accepted upon ourselves the reality that all the inhabitants of the land could dwell in peace. And were it not for nefarious schemers and murderous attitudes regarding Zion and Zionists, who deny the right of Israel to exist, who seek individually, wherever there's a flag raised with a Jewish star, to murder, were it not for those criminal and terrorist minds, we could indeed extend even further the great invitation to all to experience the unity of God's holy house, of Israel as home to nations, as the Temple Mount could be, like the temple was, a house of prayer for all who seek peace. Rashi will say about the leaders of our people, Aharon and Moshe, that a verse in Numbers that mentions the children of Moses and Aaron comes to teach us an important lesson about passing on the Torah values and the moral message of Torah to our neighbors, friends, our families, children, and students of all faiths and in the world. Moses' children's names are not mentioned, only Aaron's are when it comes to mentioning the kin of Moses. Why? Because to teach the child of one's friend the pathways of peace that are found in Torah, Kol netivoteha shalom, as we sing when we put away the Torah, to teach that ultimately the Torah seeks shalom bayit, peace in the home, peace in the homeland, peace among peoples, peace among all flags and nations of the world. Then the Torah explains, and Rashi's commentary comes to teach, the Shekhinah will dwell again among us. God's presence will be felt. And this is the message of Parshat Bamidbar, wandering through the wilderness towards a permanent home. This is the message of the potential of creating formations on earth that potentially unify. This is the message to be wary of those who seek destruction, to reject entirely terrorism and the murder of innocent Jewish souls or any souls. This is the time to call upon one another, to seek the peace of Jerusalem, to pray for her welfare. Laman achai v're'ai, adabra na shalom bach. For the sake of our kin, for our potential partners in peace, we pray for your well-being. Lama'an beit Adonai Eloheinu, avaksha tov lach. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, we seek only good. Shabbat shalom.